So, what I would like to do today is maybe to start with the piece downstairs, which I'm sure quite a lot of you have seen already, which is called, I understand, Mikado.
Correct.
Mikado is an old Japanese parlor game, right?
Yes.
Used to be also a very famous American film production company in the 70s.
Right.
And it's also an opera by Gilbert and Sullivan.
Yes.
So how do you deal with that? I mean, what was the reason why you went for this title and for this concept?
I think apart from the fact that my work deals so much with cultural cross-pollination,
Right.
that it kind of makes sense to choose something that is multi-referential. And in particular, for this space, I wanted it to tie in with the fact that it's a dance space. And so the fact of using the Mikado sticks deals with movement, and I could then do this sculpture that had a performative element, because it's as if these sticks are frozen in the gesture of falling.
Right. Okay. Maybe.
I think I might as well perhaps put the image so that but we can keep talking in the meantime.
Right. There's quite a lot of stuff there.
Yes. There it is.
There it is. Yeah, so it kind of resembles the game, I can tell. How about the fabrics? There's a lot of use of fabrics and wallpapers and textile in your work.
Yes, yes. In that piece in particular, there's actually no textiles. It's only wallpapers.
Right.
And they're wallpapers that I actually collect. I've realised I'm a bit of a collector. I have all of these archives. And a lot of the wallpapers that are metallic I found in Hong Kong. And they're the kind of wallpapers that you'd find in hotels that aspire to luxury, but actually they're quite trashy in the end.
Right.
And the other wallpapers are mainly wallpapers that I print myself, and there's a range of motifs, mainly Baroque motifs that I lift.
Okay. Baroque, which I suppose is a connection to your birthplace, which is Rome,
Yes.
which is the home of Baroque to a certain extent.
Absolutely.
Well, since we're there, Rome is kind of a tricky place for a contemporary artist, because
Yes.
there is so much art already.
Yes.
Around is kind of saturated, and it makes it really hard for a young artist to come up with something contemporary and edgy, while confronting himself or herself with all this stuff around. There was a particular reason why I decided to focus on this time of the year, of this age of art in particular, Baroque,
Yes, there is.
as opposite to all the other layers present in the city.
Yes, I think Baroque in particular, because I think we live in some sort of electronic Baroque times, and this is a theory by Norman MacLean, which wrote this very interesting book. It's from the Vatican to Vegas, and it's a history of special effects. And essentially, the Baroque, especially the Baroque churches, are like an early example of an IMAX cinema, for which people at the time didn't have TV, so they would go during a mass, and they were so overwhelmed by everything. And also, the masses at the time had quite loud and repetitive music, that a lot of them would have some form of transcendental experience. But really, this whole exercise and entertainment was more like a form of brainwashing, if you want.
Right.
And this is why I see a parallel with the times that we're living in, and the oversaturation of information, advertising.
I was actually always surprised that Baroque music is so sober in comparison to the architecture style or the art style. It's very clean. It's very mellow. It's not so loud as the art in itself. So you feel, how about kitsch? I mean, kitsch is a big element in Baroque. Is that something that you're interested in as well?
Yes, definitely. And I think it has more to do with the fact that it's a form of perhaps visual excess. And I'm interested in excesses in the same way that I'm interested in layering.
Okay, different, yeah. Um, I think there is also a strong element of pop art in your work. So is that correct? Is that a correct assumption?
Yes, yes,
there
completely. I think the structures, perhaps not so much in this work, but I could bring up another slide. I think works like this, particularly the platform, becomes nearly like a pop art vignette.
Yeah, yeah. There's some kind of comics effect too. It's kind of. And yeah, this reminds me also of the piece you showed recently at in that group exhibition in Power. Yeah.
Yes.
It's quite a title. Would you like to elaborate on that?
Absolutely. So this is a vomitorium, and okay, again, a lot of my work does reference Rome, and and I love how there's a cultural cliche around the idea of vomitorium, as in the Romans had a place where they would go and puke when they were binge eating, but in actual fact there was not such a place. They would just vomit directly from the table onto the floor.
And they will just resume eating again afterwards.
Yes, absolutely. And it wasn't, it had nothing to do with wanting to appear beautiful. It actually had literally to do with creating space so they could still keep on eating. It was a form of hedonism at its peak, if you wish. And so I was playing around with that idea and created these little three-like vomit fountains.
It's actually a very nice reflection of contemporary culture as well, in the sense that there is a lot because everything is very quick. There is a lot of just recycling and taking in and throwing out all the time. Yes. So this aspect was very present in the work.
I think in particular you said one thing a while back when we were having a conversation which really stuck to my mind, which is this idea that, like fashion, you always need to expel something in order to allow
to make room for something else.
Yes, and so and in actual fact, I think perhaps unconsciously that's why I made them as fountains, because there's always a loop there or a cycle.
Yeah, and fountain is also a very typical element of
in Rome,
Baroque architecture in Rome.
Yes.
There are quite a lot of them. So obviously, your work seems to be like a combination of your two different cultures: Italy, which is where you're from, and England, which is where you live, where you've been living for about 20 years.
No, 13.
13. Sorry.
It's okay.
You're not there yet. So you feel like there is this combination helping in define your art, or
completely. Although I'm finding myself increasingly navigating like a tourist, an Italian art history book, if you want, because this is actually quite futurist in some respects. So it's nearly like I'm redigesting, the main aspects of Rome in some respects, or the ones that are most obvious.
It's kind of pertinent that you mentioned futurist, because this year was the 100th anniversary of the draft of the first manifesto. Do you think your work is consciously informed by futurism, or this was more like an happy coincidence?
No, I think it is informed. I think it's probably focusing now a little bit more on why and what. And I think in particular things like, just to show you, this is actually a piece of furniture by Balla, which is not really famous. He's not really well known for his furniture pieces, but no. I think I have a strong relationship with this kind of work, who in turn would have informed
Ettore Sozzas. Yes. That's the library. So exactly what side of futurism do you like? I mean, what do you think is linked to your work?
There's the violent visual aspect of it and the connection of speed.
This kind of in-your-face attitude.
Yes, yes,
Okay.
absolutely, and to an extent, the energetic lines. And if one were to ask themselves what kind of work they would be making today, they probably would be looking at the media, you know.
Absolutely. Actually, that I think was one of the big mistakes in all the shows I've seen this year about the movement. It's just that it was all about the past, which is kind of the antithesis of what futurism was about, which was just destroy museums and things like that. They were quite straightforward about these things. You just flew back from Pittsburgh, I understand,
Yes.
where you had a show at the Andy Warhol Museum,
Yes.
which I think is very apt for you. What did you show there?
I had my Beheaded Monarchs, but I also had a new commission, which was very exciting. They gave me about 12 pieces of original Warhol wallpaper, and they commissioned me some new heads with them.
Right.
And this is a space where they were shown. I also really like the fact that they showed them back on top of the Warhol self-portrait wallpaper. This is all the concept of the curator, Eric Scheiner. And he also thought that with these works would live very well Warhol's time capsules, which is those works that actually look like tables, but they're actually part of his time capsules, which were works that I wasn't aware of. What he did at the beginning of the 70s is he was literally living with cardboard boxes on his desk, and he'd just throw all of these ephemera
and
in
pack
these
them
boxes
and sort
more or
them,
less every day, and then archive them, and they were in themselves an art piece. So I think this whole idea of recycling, ephemera, it makes sense that all of these elements are then shown together.
Oh, right, I see it better here. Do you have Pittsburgh must be quite a peculiar place.
Yes, it's very interesting because it's a city with most bridges that I've ever been to.
Right, it's very modern architecture, it's very...
Yes, quite modern, a lot of industrial architecture, quite clearly, but there's a lot of, I can actually have an example here. Now, this is the Andy Warhol Bridge. He even has a bridge.
He has a bridge to his name?
Yes, he has a bridge to his name. For instance, this is one of the most recent buildings. It's a patent glass manufacturer, and I think it's quite an interesting building. Pittsburgh is also quite an old town. So, for instance, there's a little fortress there.
All right.
And it's only got 300,000 people, yet it is such a vast place. And so you don't navigate it by foot, but by car. And it's full of these flyovers and so many steel bridges.
And could you spot anything around that made you think why someone like Andy Warhol would emerge from a place like that?
Definitely, because it's such a industrial city. I mean, the idea of the industry is right in your face.
So there's no concept of culture in terms of, traditional culture is...
I'm not sure about that, but I can tell you that the idea of seriality or repetition within, a factory chain work was present in the air.
It's very present.
Yes. I mean, he did leave Pittsburgh when he was
really
young.
Yeah, understandably. Yeah. And how about your collages, which we have 3 fine samples downstairs?
Mm-hmm. They are a concoction of... once again, I've been dipping into an archive. I have this fashion magazine archive from ID to Dazed and Confused that looks of the last 15 years perhaps, and I've collected quite a substantial amount of images, and I've only recently begun to layer them with historical images such as this one, which is an illustration from Petitot.
Right.
And he was a neoclassical architect, and he had this very interesting ideas in which he made costumes out of furniture.
And so you work out this kind of juxtaposition
Yes.
between the fashion image and the original art piece. You work with a lot of different media, actually, collage, sculptures. You made some videos,
Yes.
I think films as well. What's your, I mean, how does it work? I mean, what's your strong point? What do you think it's
I think definitely installation.
Installations,
Like the larger the work, the more you can engage with.
Okay.
Because it is all about details, and it's quite a complex language. So the more I can propose snippets of things that then together create, a dictionary, the stronger.
because your films seems more like animations.
Yes.
As a matter of fact.
Yes, and I think also they're quite old work. I think I passed from looking at some kind of inner fiction
Right.
to actually being more interested in places like Las Vegas, or actually being interested in the spectacle.
Right. Yeah. The show beside. Yeah, I have to say that when I got to know your work about 4 years ago, and I've noticed a big change in your sculptures. That they weren't so glossy and well defined like they are now. They used to be a bit more. I don't know. I saw more like a link to arte povera in the beginning.
Yes. I mean, with these, perhaps should I perhaps show a slide
Yeah.
of maybe. This was perhaps the first layered wallpaper installation that I did. And then it all started from here, and I agree, it's more rough.
Yeah.
Yes, and then increasingly what happened is I discovered the sculptural properties of the work, because as the layers dry and you pull them off, they become really quite sturdy.
Where was that? That was in...
This was a show curated by Nicola Sporio and Paolo Falcone, and it was in Bucharest and Italy. It went travelling around a few places around Europe.
So, do you think your sculpture work responds to the setting, to the environment in which is it placed?
In these works, definitely.
It definitely does. Yes.
Yes.
How about the more sculptural pieces, like the one downstairs?
Things like the vomitorium, no, I think it could actually exist in a number of
Anywhere.
places. I think it actually would be a very interesting sculpture outside.
Like an outdoor piece.
Yes. Actually, as if it was really a fountain.
Right. Because obviously you kind of establish a dialogue with the space you're showing in once you decide to work like that too. Yeah. So how about, do you think it's are you aware that some of your work can end up being looking very decorative?
Yes, I'm actually, I purposely play with that in the same way that when you literally go in a Baroque church, there won't be one element of the surface that wouldn't be covered or decorated, or I think there's room for a lot of experimentation in decoration, and I also think that it carries certain codes.
Yeah, and wallpapers used to be, which is a big element in your work. They were obviously they were very fashionable in the 30s and in the 60s. Not so much anymore now, but you seem to refer a lot to the 60s period, where they were kind of flashy and
I think this one in particular,
yeah.
because actually this is an original. There's a few of these. In particular, the side wallpapers. They're original 60s wallpapers.
Oh, they are?
Yes,
okay.
They actually are. Yes.
So do you go around and collect them?
Yes, I do. I've got everything. I've got Disney wallpaper, Bambi wallpaper.
What's the craziest wallpaper you ever ran into?
A German beer wallpaper embossed. It's really terrible, and yes, it's got these little bubbles on top of the glass.
Okay, that sounds like a ready-made itself.
And the colours, they're really not distinguished, so it all merges into one. It's horribly printed.
Right. So you've been collecting this stuff for quite a while, which is another it's another link with Andy Warhol to a certain extent. He was a Rat Pack, like.
Mm-hmm.
And you said something once about the word Rat Pack that I remember was kind of interesting. We had a conversation. Well, never mind.
Sorry.
Yeah, no, we're just thinking. We're just covering familiar territory here. So I just remember something like that. But maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it wasn't you.
Yeah. Perhaps I'm just thinking if I can show you. I'll probably show you this because I've just come across it recently, and it's one of the first art installations, considered to be one of the first art installations, and it's by Giacomo Balla, and it's circa 1916, and this is definitely something that will be informing my future practice.
Okay, when did you do that?
1916.
1916. Where about?
I don't know where. I'm not even sure this was. I'm not even sure where it was shown at the time. I can tell you this is a gallery in Germany.
Okay.
They've reshown it. Yeah. I don't think they had this kind of lighting at the time.
And you were trying to recreate some sort of indoor park,
Yes. I think I particularly love this image because it ties in with one of my interests, which is, creating fictional spaces or islands. In fact, I should probably go back to tiger economy a little bit and explain my interest in islands, mainly because they have their own ecosystems in which things shrink and things grow. I think they are great. Yes, this one in particular that I made in.
That's the piece at the agency.
Yes. But I also toured to New York, and it's called Tiger Economy. And if you want, it's very informed by Hong Kong.
How so?
In the way that the screens mimic some of the buildings that you might find there. Although the green one is more like a tip of a Thai temple.
Right.
And how this is made, it's a number of MDF screens, and it's got a number of materials sandwiched in the middle, starting from fabrics to fake mother of pearls to wallpaper installations, which have gone from being large-scale works to a material in themselves, and perspex. And we also have a corner. This is another side view. This is my bootlegging corner. I found this textile in Bangkok, and I really love it because it's a Picasso Lycra bootleg, which is actually something that I do a lot in my wallpapers. I bootleg images from other periods and create motifs out of them. And the yellow perspex one, that's a Liechtenstein brushstroke.
The one on the left?
Yeah, the one to the right.
Right.
Picasso one.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you're actually referring to a lot of art from.
Yes.
I mean, there is.
Yes. That this is what I mean by this idea of bootlegging is something that is fundamentally part of my practice. And so at the moment, I'm looking at futurism, but tomorrow it might be something else. It's like the industry of fashion, I consume and regurgitate continuously.
And fashion as well is a lot about recycling.
Yes.
Well, not recycling, that's not the right word. Maybe reinterpreting
completely
existing concepts and just updating them to the need of time.
In fact, also the ways that I come up with my motifs for the wallpapers is nearly seasonal.
Right, like so, like 3-4 times a year, there is.
Yes.
Okay, so there is actually a change in your work depending by the season you're working on.
Nearly. Clearly, I'd like it, you know, to be more seasonal. But perhaps I should explore the idea of the collection in it.
Yeah, maybe you should. That's actually a good idea. Yeah. Any questions from you? Oh yeah, there are. Okay, I have one myself, but I'll let the audience first.
The Deposed Monarch series. Can you tell us something about what's the seed behind that? How did you develop that?
Yes, sure. I started making these wallpaper sculptures. I'll actually quickly run you through them, which were more like this. And what happened here is that I used to, when I was making my installations, I always ended up with these little mounts of drying wallpaper, and then I realized how stiff they were, and they were interesting in themselves. So I started playing with that, and these I call ancone, and they're related to the Baroque, useless architectural ornamentations present on buildings. Then those further developed into shapes that were a little bit more recognizable, or basically perhaps more figurative. And at the time that I was making Tiger Economy, I thought it might be interesting to make work that related to the island and in the way that I've been looking at consumerism within the island. And so these are beheaded monarchs because I considered the French monarchs to be the first examples of shopaholics. And also, if you go to places like Dubai, in the shopping malls, you'll have all of these, very rich Muslim ladies wearing their charades, and what they have, like the only way that they really express themselves is through, designer sunglasses and Yves Saint Laurent or whatever other designer charade. And so this idea of layering and recreating portraits that are also a bit charade-like, referring to patterns that have to do with consumerism through art history. That's how I got there. And they're looking at the Tiger Economy island.
Apart from the borrowing of aesthetics from history,
Yes.
I noticed that with the architecture and with the wallpaper, these cities and these architectural spaces tell stories. I don't know if sort of memory archives and stories
Yes.
informs you when you're working with a process which takes form.
Yes, archives definitely. This is really something that comes from the experience of living and growing up in a city museum such as Rome, in which everything is, juxtaposed and layered all in one. And wherever you turn around, you've got, a historical building next to another one. And from certain perspectives, if you close one eye, they nearly merge into and become something else altogether. So this idea of layering time or layering art history is definitely something that I've inherited from my everyday surroundings.
You think this is something you were taking for granted until you moved to the UK?
Completely. I so didn't realise what it meant to live in a city museum. It's a very peculiar experience, to the point that we don't even have a proper transport system. We only have one little line, and it connects a third of the city, and we can't dig because wherever you dig, there's a Roman ruin. So And in a way, perhaps what the fascists did in terms of, altering the whole area around St. Peter's and creating this huge, gate towards seeing St. Peter in its splendor, that was such a radical act at the time. It's something that hasn't happened since, probably won't happen ever again. Who knows?
No. But yeah, there is a long history of...
I think Flo has a question.
Oh, sorry.
That relates to your use of color.
Mm-hmm.
And okay, my question relates to your use of color, and it may be completely moot because I'm relying mainly on my memory of seeing your work. But it seems to me that in the more recent works, in the installations in particular, like Tiger Economy, from what I can see of the vomitorium and the piece downstairs, the color hues that you choose for the constructions
Mhm.
seem to be much tamer
Yes.
than what you use in the wallpaper, which
Yes.
is a lot more brash and aggressive in the tones themselves and in the combinations.
Yes, I think to an extent that's correct, and that's partly to do with the fact that in my earlier work I really was looking mainly at club culture, and hence the variety of fluorescence that you would get, for instance, in the early rave period. Whilst now I'm looking more at shopping malls, and in a way there's nearly a cosmetic reference, like there's a lot of, Yves Saint Laurent palettes, for instance, or so that's the muting. But then having said that, for instance, in the vomitorium, the really three-dimensional plastics, the orange and the yellow one, they're extremely strong. I think I'm also looking for more extreme clashes. And if you stay within a terrain of fluorescence, you're not going to achieve that entirely. You need something that is the opposite of that.
No, I just find it quite interesting that the stronger colors seem to come out in the textiles and in the paper, and all of the kind of framing mechanisms seem to be much more, mute isn't the right word,
Yes.
much softer tones.
Yes. Also in Tiger Economy, it also has to do with the fact that, for instance, I chose that particular hue of sand color because it reminds you of, for instance, the sand that you might find on an island. It recalls the idea of an island much quicker due to its color.
Yeah.
Do you have any more photographs of the installation of the Andy Warhol
Sure.
Museum? I'd like to see the works
Yes.
that you made specifically.
Absolutely. So these are actually the three. I don't have the fourth. But I think what worked really well was when the wallpaper that I was using inside the work connects to the wallpaper outside. Although on one on the left, it's the Mao wallpaper. It's not actually his self-portrait. But he used the same purple, so it flows in.
How many wallpapers did they give you?
They actually gave me 12. Not the entire row, but quite
Yeah,
big fragments, yes. And it's quite interesting, how you have to document it. I actually had to send back, if I had something ripped off, like a tiny little piece, I even had to send that back. It was, that's how, worried they are about the whole reproduction and use. I even thought, what if I did end up keeping a little bit of the remnants and tore them into paper mache and made a work and then said, hey, but this does contain Andy, what would happen then? I didn't do that. I thought about it.
What kind of response did you get there when you had the show?
But interesting, good response, although it was in coincidence with the Shepherd Fairy exhibition. I don't know how many of you are familiar with him. He's gigantic in the States, and he's very big in the States because he's actually had an active political role there. He's actually contributed to the election of Obama. You might know him because of his image of Obama with the writing Hope underneath. He made the Time cover a while back. So of course, there was a lot of attention to that. And it was interesting for me to witness because it's a role, the artist as a politician, which is not something I've experienced here in Europe, really. He actually was dressed as a politician. At the dinner, he came with his lobby, he gave a speech to his lobby. All the photos of him in the magazines were with his wife and his child. It was quite interesting. And at the beginning, I was a bit scared. I thought, oh my God, this is such a machine, But then you realize what constructive contribution he's had, and if you were happy to get rid of Bush, as I'm sure we all were, then then I have a lot of respect for him because of that.
Yeah, he's like a celebrity
Yeah.
himself.
Yeah.
That's a little bit. Was that a little bit weird for you to have to be competing in a way with that
No,
sort of media
not at
attention?
all, not at all. I actually really, how can I say? For me, it was a new experience because I'd never come in touch with that kind of celebrity, and I'm increasingly spending more time in the States, and it's a very interesting. It's place. It's like the wild, wild west in some respects.
Yeah, no, part of the reason why I was asking what the reception was like in Pittsburgh was because in light of the nature of your work, I was wondering if you noticed any difference when you show in Italy or in America or in London, just because of this combination of elements.
Yes, I think what happens in the States is that they respond immediately, and I think that's quite natural because I use so many of the visual references that they have every day, like my Mickey Mouse wallpapers. It's so part of their cultural fabric. That while I've also noticed that over there, wall-based work seems to have a more natural response as opposed to sculpture.
Right.
And I think sculpture, it made me realise just how much sculpture is a presence, particularly in London.
As opposite to Rome, where maybe...
Yes, I mean, Italy, to be quite frank with you, I don't know, like I have the impression that it's quite a visually conservative and minimalist and desaturated art scene. So.
I mean, contemporary art-wise.
Yes. So I actually don't think I have a good response in Italy.
Oh, okay. That's interesting. Any more questions? Okay, I've got one more.
Yeah.
No, it's about craft,
right.
Which seems to be a very predominant aspect of your work. Is this something that do you enjoy making your work?
I mean,
the construction of your, the physical aspect of your work. Is it something you're?
Yes, I do. Apart from when I get highly intoxicated, as Kit knows. There's so much glue involved that, yes, it does get to your head a little bit.
Right, but in general, you feel like
I think actually, on a personal level, I think it's something important to enjoy what you do.
I was just asking because I think it's an interesting contrast to the concept of repetition, which is quite opposite to that. I wasn't certainly enjoying that part of the work.
Right.
Which is,
I'd actually never thought about that. Yes,
okay.
yes. No, it's. I actually self-produce everything. I delegate the least possible.
So you think it's necessary to see the manual side of the work, even though it's about repetition, it's about industrial production and the sort.
Completely, and especially because it's actually, although it's in some respects it's a little bit slicker just because of the nature of the structure, for instance, that holds the screens.
Right.
At the same time, it's very important for me to still have that arte povera reference, or that reference in which it looks like it could all crumble at any moment.
Right.
And in the moments that you manufacture something, they tend to make very, strong, resistant, and my stuff needs to remain dainty.
Yeah, look kind of fragile. I mean, there is like
yes,
precarious.
Exactly.
Balance.
It needs to stay in the realm of a 70s TV set with a really low budget.
Right. It's nice.
I wondered if you could maybe talk a little bit more about your idea of Orientalism in terms of your work. And you brought up Ghana, islands, even things such as Chen Now, without such an arrow wrapped up in his head as well. So then there seems to be sort of like some kind of relationship with exoticism, or like illusionism or exoticism.
Yes, I think it's a kind of, well, there's two things that I could say to that. The first, that it's the kind of illusion that one might have in Las Vegas when you go and visit these places, and it's always about something else. But also, I think particularly in Asia, particularly places like Hong Kong, have really fascinated me because they seem to be designed around the idea of the shopping mall. I'm just going to find an image for that.
Which is actually what Baroque was about as well, to a certain extent.
Mhm.
It was called
Yes.
Agora. It wasn't the
Yes,
shopping mall, but there was a center point of life in the city.
yes. Like to give you an example, this is a shopping mall in Hong Kong, and that's a gallery, an art gallery with a Yoikuzama show.
Right.
And it seems like all of these buildings are interconnected by a never-ending corridor, be they banks and shopping malls. But also talking about shopping malls. This is in Dubai, and it's in a shopping mall, and it's a ski resort. And then you also have, and this is a new museum in Bangkok, and they've purposely and deliberately designed it around a shopping mall, and it has an escalator running right through it. And they've done it because they think the general public is not really informed about art, and the shopping mall is where they feel at home, is what they know, and so they will come if the architecture feels
Right. Like provide a more friendly environment to experience art.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Well, it's a lot about the contextualization too.
Yes.
Vegas as well.
Yes.
Just when you have all these, like the Bellagio Hotel and these very fun places where they recreate exactly,
Yes.
well, almost exactly.
And I think perhaps reconnecting to the Baroque, there is this idea of oversaturation in the Baroque, and the fact that you get so distracted that you're going to take in a message, which is pretty much what happens in a supermarket. You get so bombarded and confused that you're more likely to buy the product.
Yes. Yes.
Can I just ask that all this work around hedonism and excess and so on, does it also carry a critique in any way, or is it a celebration?
No, I mean there is a critique, but I think it's my relationship with it, which is a relationship of lust and disgust. And this is why with the vomitorium, that's the kind of feelings that I'm trying to arise. It's actually a bit disgusting, particularly when you see this this plastic that really actually looks like pieces of vomit falling off, but at the same time you're attracted to it.
Well, you made it look very elegant, yeah. So it's more like you respond to.
Yes. Yes,
term.
I think it wouldn't be honest if I said I didn't want, the latest Manolo Blahnik shoes.
Okay.
I wanted to ask you about something to do with ownership and a lot of your work, all the material that are found, and things that you've collected, the wallpaper itself. But how important is it for you to start from something that exists already, or do you have to start with your own idea and then find the material that will realize?
I think it happens both, but I think there's always a reference aspect in my practice. Like it's very difficult that you'd see something that I've produced that doesn't reference, even if in just a tiny detail, something else. It's because it's kind of like again, I cannot work without an archive, and it has to be an archive, a recognizable archive.
So you can relate to Nicolas Bourria's concept of post-production?
Yes, actually very much, and I've been thinking about what my understanding is of this whole ultra-modern thing, and I wonder if it has to do with the fact that we just accept that everything comes in segments and bits, and is so globalized that that's just our language now.
You mean like just because it's very mixed?
Yes. That it's. I think we live more of repetitions and references rather than new imagery entirely.
How about speed? I mean, there is also that's a factor.
Yes.
Just how quickly you experience things now
Yes.
because of this oversaturation
Yes, yes.
of images. But then you seem to bring it kind of back with your work, which is kind of...
But
Well, you sort of stop it. I mean, it's like if you freeze it to a certain
yes,
extent.
yes. Perhaps that's also one of the reasons why I'm becoming interested in futurism, because there is an evocation of speed through the line, or for instance, through the vomitorium, there's a little bit of feeling that it starts liquid and then it becomes a little bit more dense, and then finally it falls. But I'm trying to recall that, which is also a very animation language without dealing with film, you know.
I was actually surprised by how your animations are very minimal in tone, as opposite to the rest of your work.
Perhaps
yeah, we can perhaps show some just to have an idea. That's very lo-fi. It reminds me more of like a moving version of Raymond Pettibon. You know, it's kind of...
Yes, I mean, if you want, it could be an extract from a teenage fantasy, and this is what I mean by I've gone from exploring, if you want, a more internalized version of the idealistic, from that to an architectural one, an outside one.
You didn't have enough materials in your archive?
No, that's because it in a way, yes, but on the other hand, also because it just became very difficult to work with something that was also so personal, you know. And at the end of the day, I think entertainment as such, that there are such amazing examples all over. You know, I became more interested in the things that I could discover as opposed to came directly from myself.
You kind of anticipated me here, because I remember you used to draw your own wallpapers in the early days. What made you switch to actually working with
I think Las
with
Vegas
existing
was
ones?
really
Las Vegas was a
such
turning point.
Yes, it was really a massive experience.
I know it was. Right. Yeah. Any other questions around? Okay. Well, it's 8 o'clock. I think it's fine. So thank you very much, Ludovica, and
Thank you for
thank you very much for coming. That's all, folks.